Hi, I'm Rachel, and this is my 2023 BookTube Prize Octofinals Ranking video. Getting this out a couple days later than I might have hoped to, but squeezing it in right before the start of Passover, so huzzah, feeling pretty good about that at least, and let's get to it. So the BookTube Prize was started a couple of years ago by Robert at the channel Barter Hordes. The intention is for members of the literary book community to have a space to come together and judge the best of literary fiction and nonfiction published in English in the US the year before, so 2022 for this year. And we start with long lists of 48 books per division and then whittle them down through 4 rounds until we get to 2 winners for fiction and nonfiction. So I actually signed up to be a judge in both divisions and was able then to help craft the long lists for both divisions. And then since then I have been tracking stats. So the way this started is that we were all allowed to vote for up to 20 books in the divisions that we were okay to judge in. And so out of both of my divisions, both fiction and nonfiction, 12 of the 20 titles for each made it onto the official long list for me, which was kind of low. I was surprised that it was so low for me this year. But that being said, now we're, 1 round in, the Octofinals are over, and out of those 12 books, in fiction, 8 of them remain, and in nonfiction, 7 of them remain. And that seems like a pretty decent amount out of 12. So, I don't know, feeling pretty optimistic about that. I was excited to read those books and glad that other judges were also excited and seemed to like them, I would think. I am a little nervous when it comes to fiction that the short story collections are going to get whittled out really early. This is the first year that Robert has allowed for short story collections to be contenders, but people are weird with collections and kind of judge them based on uneven feelings, I think, about the stories. But technically I haven't looked at this too closely. I'm not quite sure how many short story collections have been eliminated and how many remain. It's just sort of a reaction I had to watching the Octofinals official video, which I will link down below, where Robert, officially announced which books are going on to the quarterfinals. And anyway, I did not judge in fiction for the first round for the Octofinals. I judged in nonfiction, and I was given Group H. And the whole point is we have to rank the books 1 through 6, with the top 3 being the ones we personally want to see advance to the next round, and the bottom 3 being the ones we want eliminated. And for me, 2 of the top 3 books I chose ultimately made it to the next round, because Robert went ahead and, averaged out what all the judges in my group think. And so I'm feeling pretty good about that too, especially my top 2 making it forward. But that being said, this is like the most exciting part really of the prize, when we finally get to open up about our feelings, because it's so fascinating to me. I watch a lot of judges talk about their rankings, and we have all such a variety of opinions about what we're reading and what, moves us and why and that sort of thing. So I'm looking forward to, I've started watching those videos for the Octofinals, and I'm looking forward to continuing. And now I'm going to go ahead and add my piece and share my official rankings and give my thoughts about why I put the books where I did. So without further ado, I'm going to start with my last place book, book number 6. So in 6th place for my ballot, I put Also a Poet, which was a memoir by Ada Calhoun. This is a memoir that was supposed to be a biography. I mean to say that a biography is what Ada Calhoun set out to write. Her subject matter was the deceased New York school poet Frank O'Hara. But the executor of his estate, his sister Maureen, didn't like the direction that Calhoun seemed to be taking the book, so she denied interviews and rights. And to be honest, I don't quite blame Maureen. Calhoun's project seemed to be more about a messy reckoning concerning the relationship she had with her own father, who 40 years prior was also denied access to writing an official biography of Frank O'Hara. Allegedly, both father and daughter revered the poet, but after reading this book, I still have no full idea why. Calhoun is an insider into the mid-century world of poets and art critics. But I'm not, and I don't feel like she let me in. I never cared about these people or the hodgepodge of interviews that Calhoun put together. There was some promise in this book that was mostly about the relationship with her father, but ultimately it wasn't enough. In fifth place, I put Blood and Ruins by Richard Overy. This was an exhaustive account of World War II, and yet by the end of it I thought despite everything Overy did, there's so much he still had to leave out. Such is the breadth of this war which truly altered the globe. And such was Overy's thesis. World War II, he claimed, was about the end of imperium, which is to say, the style of military expansion that defined empire building for most of human history. Japan, Italy, and Germany tried to get into the game, but not only did they fail, but Britain, one of the Allies, also lost its empire. Nationalism, perhaps aided by the Allies creating the United Nations, thrived in its place. And also the Cold War between the US and the USSR, which Overy argues is a different sort of struggle for power. I do think that the historian, Overy, defended his imperium thesis, especially in the more philosophical chapters. But elsewhere, with his granular accounting of every battle and every tank, maybe not. I mean to say that it was such specific information that it probably did mean a whole bunch of different things. The writing was also very dry and academic, and I figured a high bar of entry for most readers. Then again, World War II itself is a juicy and dramatic topic. I felt impressed and yet a little rebuffed. But I think more of my judges leaned on the impressed part, because this is a book that remains in the BookTube Prize running. In fourth place, I put Reading Dangerously by Azar Nafisi. This book might also have a high bar of entry, since it is, in essence, literary criticism. Most readers don't like critiquing books they haven't read. I'm biased because, in fact, I have read many of the novels Nafisi is talking about, plus I'm the team fiction person of the nonfiction division. But what I loved most was Nafisi's interest in avoiding moral authoritarianism, and also embracing debate. In this epistolary work, she, a liberal thinker, fondly looks back on her college days and debates that she had with an Ayn Rand fan, and how those conversations shaped her. She highlights seeing the humanity in various groups of people. Nafisi eschews totalitarianism. Having experienced the 1979 revolution in her home country of Iran, this book, penned in the US during the pandemic, also touches on her adopted country's abuses. The style is framed as letters that she is writing to her deceased father. And frankly, I think that's where the book falls apart. It's obviously a clumsy conceit. And obviously we, the stranger, are meant to be her true reader. But I still felt challenged by what she had to say, and often nostalgic for the books that we share in common. So now we're getting to the three books I wanted to move on to the next round, and it's very biography heavy. I really liked the biographies this time around. So anyway, in third place I put Keats by Lucasta Miller. This is where I personally start to feel embroiled, like as a character in the BookTube Prize saga. A couple of years ago, I judged Radical Wordsworth by Jonathan Bate for this prize. It was a biography of one of John Keats's contemporaries, the Romantic poet William Wordsworth. In that biography, Keats came off as a flippant upstart. Wordsworth, Bate said, was underappreciated in his later career. In this biography, Miller responds that Keats was underappreciated in his career, mostly for being poorer than the other poets of his age and for dying young. Lord Byron comes off as the bully in this book, so I can only assume I'll be reading a biography about him in a couple of years. But anywho, Miller explores Keats's life by dissecting some of his poetry and the epitaph on his grave. And it can be a little off-putting. Again, I'm team fiction, and sometimes parsing poetry is a little pie in the sky for me. That being said, it was fascinating to learn more about Keats's real life. his down-on-the-ground influences, including his medical career, his love affairs, and his politics. Plus, now that Miller lives where Keats once did, she's a character in her own story. And that shows that the past isn't always quite a distant thing. So that's pretty cool. In second place, I put His Name is George Floyd by Robert Samuels and Tolu Olorunipa. In a way, this book feels less like biography and more like social history. And maybe to quibble, I wish there were a little more details about certain aspects of Floyd's life. But these are small potatoes overall. This is a powerhouse of a book, relying on hundreds of interviews to talk not only about the specifics of George Floyd's life that led him to a place where his death would become a movement, but it also unearthed so much information about Floyd's family history and how the experiences of his ancestors and his neighborhood were shaped by U.S. systemic racism. It's a case study in and of itself about the ills in U.S. society. It is also, in fact, a biography about a lovable, insecure man, going from dreams of athletic achievement and struggles with his classwork to supporting drug addicts while dealing with his own demons. And both of these writers, who are reporters for the Washington Post, could write. Sure, the murder trial maybe felt a little unwieldy, and yes, it shifted focus to the interiority of other people. But hey, I felt for them. This book, I think, has all the ingredients to make it to the final round of the BookTube Prize. And that's where I'm going to make my official annual prediction. Guess I'll have to wait and see how it pans out. And finally, in first place, I put The Escape Artist by Jonathan Friedland. I was nervous to read this book and very purposely did not vote for it to make the long list at all. I'm pretty selective when it comes to reading about the Holocaust. But after all of this, I think this book definitely deserves a spot. It tells the story of Rudolf Verba, who was a teenager when he was sent to and then 2 years later escaped from Auschwitz. Verba was in somewhat a unique position, given his labor assignment, to understand the reality behind the Jewish resettlement lie that the Nazis were telling. He also had an incredible photographic memory, and once he and another prisoner, Alfred Wexler, got out, he was able to share very specific details about the running of the death camp. His goal was to save the Hungarian Jews, although ultimately most of them were murdered as planned. But his report is credited with saving the 200,000 Jews in Budapest. He's remarkably little well known for his achievements, perhaps because he's not or wasn't so much a model survivor. He was a prickly man who, in fact, blamed the Jewish leadership a lot for basically the Nazi successes in committing the genocide. Friedland parses the complex nature of his subject, both before, during, and after the Holocaust. It is mostly taking place within Auschwitz, though, very harrowing. The whole book is fascinating, heartbreaking, raw, and human, both about Verba and then also the nature of the anti-Semitism in Europe and the genocide. As an Ashkenazi Jew, I am definitely already partial to this subject, but I'm glad that other judges agreed with me. This is a worthy read. So, that about covers it for me now. I will leave my Goodreads reviews for all 6 of these books linked down below, now that I am finally allowed to share them with the world. And I should hopefully be back on this channel very soon to give my preliminary thoughts about the quarterfinals, because indeed I am judging the next round of the BookTube Prize as well, and I definitely want to get out my thoughts on that before I officially start reading, and the month is ticking away already. I hope all of you who judged for the prize had mostly positive experiences with the books you were reading, and I'm very much looking forward to your thoughts if you want to post videos or comment or do whatever it is you need to do. And thank you, as always, to Robert for just so seamlessly, organizing this whole thing across continents and countries and hundreds of people. It's really amazing what you do, and I'm just so grateful to be a part of this. And I'm, of course, leaving information to the BookTube Prize down below. And yes, I hope anyone who is celebrating Passover has a wonderful holiday. Chag Sameach. Thank you so much for watching, everyone, and I'll see you next time.